Hello and welcome back to Doctor Who, the cancelled years. In this video, we'll be covering Series 2 of The Pyramid. So, let's get started. Series 2 of The Pyramid would have been a continuation of Series 1. Between seasons, Russell T Davies and Paul Cornell took on the criticism Series 1 received and aimed to prove on any mistakes. David Arnold agreed to compose the music for the second season, however he announced that he wouldn't be composing the third. Replacing him in Series 3 would be Who composer Murray Gold. As this season was going out in 2003, Doctor Who's 40th anniversary year, this season would have had a few references to Doctor Who's history. And now, let's get to the episodes. The first episode would have been Zygon Romance, written by Russell T Davies. The story was a sort of man falling through the rift and being rescued by the Pyramid team. They soon discovered that the person is in fact a Zygon stuck in human form like Jennifer, named Zakrot, or Zak as they call him. Zak explains to the team that his ship was destroyed and that he's the last of his crew. They contact the planet Zygon to come pick up Zak. However, for the meanwhile, he's stuck on Earth, so for the time being, he stays with Jennifer. The story would have saw Zak and Jennifer beginning to bond a relationship as they begin to fall for each other. We would have saw them throughout the course of a month as they begin to become a couple. However, during this time, Zak's ship never comes. Then 1 month later, Jennifer and Zak announced to the Pyramid team that Jennifer is leaving to move to the countryside and settle down with Zak. After saying her goodbyes to the old team, Jennifer and Zak leave in the taxi. However, as soon as the taxi is out of sight of the pyramid, Zak and the taxi driver suddenly morph back into Zygon form. It turns out that all of this was a trick. Zak wasn't a disabled Zygon, and he never loved Jennifer. He was just gaining her trust. Now that he has her, he's taking her back to Zygon to stand trial for abandoning the Zygon Empire. They take her to an abandoned cottage in the forest, where they wait for a Zygon ship to arrive. We see Zak torturing and beating Jennifer over the course of the next few days. Eventually, Jennifer has the chance to escape and signal the Pyramid team and tell them that she's in danger. The team eventually arrive at the cottage and are able to rescue Jennifer. The taxi driver Zygon is killed by Chris and Zak is captured. Bernice asks Jennifer what they should do with Zak. Jennifer begins to cry a bit, points a gun at Zak's head and tells Bernice nothing as she pulls the trigger on him. The story would have ended with Jennifer and the rest of the cast on the roof of the pyramid, drinking whiskey and cocoa, watching the stars and comforting Jennifer. The second episode would have been Death Day, written by Joseph Lidster. The story would have saw Jack living his usual day as he works with the Pyramid team and does whatever he usually does. However, as night approaches, he goes out for a walk and finds himself face to face with a person in an alien mask. The person begins to chase down Jack, and when he catches him, he kills Jack with a dagger through the brain. Then all of a sudden, Jack wakes up in his bed, believing it to have been a bad dream. We then see him going about his day, but we soon notice that everything around him is repeating like it did in the dream. Then he's killed by the man in the alien mask again, but in a slightly different scenario. And then he wakes up, and everything repeats again. The story would have saw Jack being forced to work on his own to put the pieces of the puzzle together with the little information he has, and with little to no help from his team as they forget everything when time rewinds. He's truly in the dark for most of the runtime. Eventually he finds out that the person behind the mask is an alien named the Cloak, who feeds off an individual's death by trapping them in the never-ending loop of living and dying, and the only way Jack can break free is if he kills the Cloak. And eventually Jack is able to kill the Cloak with the very limited help from Bernice, Chris and Jennifer and break free of the cycle. The third episode would have been The Hunters of Stone, written by Stephen Moffat. The story would have saw the return of the Weeping Angels from the Doctor Who episode Blink. The story would have opened with the Pyramid team living an ordinary day. Then as the day goes on, Bernice and Chris begin to notice the first signs of the Weeping Angels. At night, Chris and Bernice are leaving and heading back to Bernice's place, when suddenly they begin to be surrounded by a group of Weeping Angels. As the angels close in on them, they hear a familiar voice shout, "Don't blink." They spot the outline of someone in the distance. The person begins to get closer to Bernice and Chris to help them, and then they realise who this person is. It's the Doctor, their Doctor, the 8th Doctor to be precise. The Doctor helps Bernice and Chris escape the Circle of Angels and run away from them. When they're safe, Bernice and Chris begin talking to the Doctor, which confuses him. To Bernice and Chris, he's one of their oldest friends, but to the Doctor, they're total strangers. At first they're confused, but then Bernice works it out when Rain Cunningham appears carrying some stuff for the Doctor. This is a version of the 8th Doctor from before he met Bernice. The story just saw Bernice and Chris working with the Doctor and Rain to find a way to stop the Weeping Angels. Throughout the story, a lot of tension is going on between the two groups. The Doctor's figured out that he meets the two of them at some point in his future, but doesn't exactly know who they are or who they are to him, as Bernice and Chris are using fake names. Eventually the Weeping Angels are defeated when the Doctor uses the TARDIS to send the Weeping Angels to the end of the universe, far in the future where they'll never harm anyone again. At the end of the story, Bernice and Chris are invited on board the TARDIS for farewell. Bernice and Chris eventually crack and reveal who they are to the Doctor and Rain. The Doctor gets annoyed at them, but Bernice has planned for this, as she uses a machine that she's created to blank their memories of what's just occurred. They then leave the TARDIS before the Doctor and Rain come back round, and when they do, the TARDIS dematerialises. The 4th episode would have been Countryside, written by Chris Chibnall. This would have been pretty much the same as the Torchwood episode that shares the same name. However, there would be a few minor changes to help better fit the pyramid. Other than that, there would have been pretty much the same story. The 5th episode would have been The Birth of a New Evil, written by Paul Cornell and Robert Sherman. The story opens with a group of 300 humanoid aliens being brought in by the pyramid. They say that they're the last of their race, known as the Wolvins, after their planet was destroyed. While they're in the pyramid, one of them drugs Bernice's coffee when no one is looking, and when Bernice drinks the coffee, the 3 Wolvins reveal to the group that their race is saved and that Bernice is their saviour, before they collapse to the ground and die. Then a few hours later, Bernice begins to feel unwell. Her body begins to swell up, her skin turns grey, and she begins vomiting green liquid, before blacking out. She's taken to a hospital by the rest of the pyramid team. The next day, Bernice wakes up in the hospital bed. She appears to be fine now. Her skin's settled back to a normal colour, the swelling has gone down, and the vomiting has stopped. However, Bernice soon discovers a nightmare, as she discovers she's pregnant. She screams in horror and terror, and Chris and Jennifer burst in the room to calm her down. She's eventually taken back to the pyramid, where everything is explained to her. The Wolvins were led by their god named Brove. During the last days of Wolvonia, Brove extracted parts of his DNA and sent out a group of Wolvins to Earth to plant his DNA in the potential host. That host ended up being Bernice. She is now carrying the child of an alien Satan. The child will be born after hours of pain from the host. It'll grow much faster than a human, a year a day to be precise. And over those days, the child will search inside itself and seek out its purpose, to destroy the world. Bernice, now horrified for her life, tries everything to stop the child from being born. However, every option would involve her dying, and no one can bring themselves to kill Bernice. If the child is aborted, it'll also kill Bernice, as the two are now connected. The only way forward is to let it be born, and after 9 days of waiting, the birth process begins. After going through hell, the child is born, and after the birthing, everyone suggests that they should kill it, but Bernice defends the child. She says she hopes by giving it a clean and healthy upbringing, she can prevent Earth's destruction. The story ends with Bernice and Chris taking on the roles of the kid's parents, and naming the child the only fitting name they can think of, Damien. The final episode would have been Damien, written by Paul Cornell. The story would have saw Bernice and Chris raising Damien over the course of the following days. The first 3 days are quite easy to go through, as Damien begins to grow. Bernice and Chris do everything they can to give Damien a good life away from evil. However, on the 4th day, trouble occurs, as Damien's first words are mass genocide. Over the next 5 days, things become much worse as Damien begins to become more and more corrupt. And then on Damien's 10th birthday, he starts a fire in the pyramid. Eventually, everyone comes to agrees that nothing will work, and Damien has got to be killed. However, they soon discover that the Wolverines are near indestructible. The only way one can die is by self-suicide, old age, which could take at least 1,000 days, or if its host, in this case Bernice, kills them. Bernice tries to shoot Damien, but can't, as during the birthing process, Damien infected Bernice with a Wolverine virus that prevents the host from killing their offspring. The next day, Bernice and Chris feel as though they can get somewhere, as they teach Damien to hold back his thoughts of death and domination by punching their teddy they nickname Mr. Satan. On the 18th day, Damien gets into a fighting argument with Bernice, which angers him to the brink. After holding back his anger, he cracks and leaves. He discovers his inner self and seeks out his full purpose to destroy the world. He then begins to grow bigger and bigger, and then becomes a monster the size of a small building. Cardiff is in chaos as Damien begins to attack the city. The only person who can stop him is Bernice, but she can't lay a finger on him. Chris, Jack and Jennifer help Bernice fight the virus in her mind and grant her the ability to kill Damien. Eventually her mind is strong enough to fight out the virus, and without hesitation she pulls out a pistol from her pocket and fires everything in it at Damien until he collapses and falls over dead. Damien then proceeds to shrink and shrink until there's nothing of him left. At the end of the story, Bernice is a mix of emotions: sad, angry and confused. Chris begins to comfort her and make her feel better, and the story ends with the two of them sharing their first kiss. And that concludes Series 2 of The Pyramid. This season did quite well and was received better than Series 1. The show was commissioned for a third season, however due to reasons, the season would be delayed by a year, meaning Season 3 would not air until 2005. So join me next time for Season 40 of Doctor Who. Until then, thank you for watching and goodbye.